Hi, my name is Gerald Antonacci, and I'm a member of Willets Point United. I'm here to set the record straight on the Willets Point development. Number one, this is a project whose supporters and beneficiaries have resorted to illegal lobbying. They've even been fined $59,000 for doing so. The developer selection process has been tainted and is suspicious. The so-called benefits of this project have been either eliminated or been delayed for years. The housing, the linchpin of this development, has been delayed to the year 2025. There's no good reason for that. The eminent domain has been abused. The plan calls for building a huge mall on 30 acres of public parkland. The impacts of this project will ruin the quality of life for anybody who lives in this area or anybody who is commuting through the area. The costs have been shifted from the developer paying the majority of the cost to the taxpayers of New York City paying the project. This present project differs dramatically from the original proposed project. I'm sure after this video is over that you will be as outraged as I am of what is taking place here in Willets Point. For those of you who don't know, Willets Point is a 62-acre industrial area surrounded by highways. We have the Grand Central Parkway on one side. We have the Van Wyck Expressway on the other side. We have the Whitestone Expressway on one side, Northern Boulevard, Astoria Boulevard. The Long Island Expressway is about a mile away. So it's a perfect location for trucking companies or delivery companies. We have 250 businesses that operate in the Willets Point area. As for me personally, I am the owner of Crown Container Company along with my brother Dave. Our business sits on property that we own in Willets Point, that we operate our business on. The city is trying to take that property within the next couple of years for this Willets Point development. We will fight that to the end. We don't know if we're going to win or lose, but we will fight it to the end. We will hold the city accountable for every promise or proposal that they've made to get the approvals on this project. You see, I refuse to lose my property over a bunch of promised lies. And that's what this project has become, a bunch of promised lies. They have delivered nothing of what they promised or proposed in the 2008 approvals. Let me explain. Starting in 2005, our great Mayor Bloomberg and his stooges over at the Economic Development Corporation targeted this area for redevelopment. In 2008, they started making promises of affordable housing. They were going to build 5,500 units, and 35% of it was supposed to be affordable housing. They made claims of outrageous contamination on the property. They were going to remediate all the 62 acres of industrial property, clean it all up. It had to all be done at once. Couldn't be done in steps, parts here, parts there. Had to all be done at once. The city, under threat of eminent domain, went around and started getting people to sell their property. People were scared. People were horrified. They thought they were going to lose their properties and get nothing for it. So they started selling their properties to the city. The city, when they picked a developer, was supposed to sell those properties to the developer at the cost that it cost them. Now, they said the cost of remediation was supposed to be $570 million for the whole 62 acres. The developer was supposed to pay for the cost of remediation. Now, if we go back to the council hearing, Deputy Mayor Lieber said that if the remediation was $570 million, what would happen would be they'd work that off the price of the land that they sell the land to the developer. You see, the city bought the land from the landowners that didn't want to sell their property but were forced under the threat of eminent domain, so the city bought that property. They're turning it over to the developer at a price, and that price was to be figured out minus whatever the remediation was. The cost of the remediation was supposed to be specifically paid by the developer, not by the city, not by nobody else. But after obtaining the approvals for the project, everything has changed. Everything. The plan was cut into 3 phases. You remember when I explained in the beginning, they said It had to be built all at once because of the remediation. You had to remediate the whole place at one time. Now it's cut into phases. All those arguments they gave you before, out the door, lies, don't matter. Don't matter who bought them, who didn't buy them. They're out the door, they're doing it in phases. This phase that we're talking about, guess where it is? Guess where it's conveniently located? Across the street from Citi Field, which the Mets own. Now we go fast forward a little bit. The developer has been selected now. I ask you to guess who the developer is. If you guess the Mets, you guess right. Their company called Sterling Equities is owned by the Wilpons, who own the Mets. Guess a price. Guess a price they paid for these 23 acres of property directly across from the stadium. If you guessed $1, you're right. You ask, how can they pay $1 for 23 acres? Well, I'm still asking myself, and still many other people asking themselves. How they came to that figure, I don't know. But I know the figure I came to. And it's in the hundreds of millions that should have been paid. Now let me explain to you how I came to that figure. They were buying up property under the threat of eminent domain from landowners in that phase one for approximately anywhere from $200 a square feet and up. So let's take the low number at $200 a square feet. There's approximately 1 million and a piece square feet in that 23 acre site. So the properties are worth, on a bare minimum, on a scale of what they paid for the other properties, $215 million for the first phase, 23 acres. Now in the contract the city has with Sterling, it says they will remediate that property for $40 million. They will clear the land and grade it for another $22 million. And they will knock down all the buildings that are on it for another $12 million, I believe. Altogether it was $75 million. Well, last time I went to school, $215 million minus $75 million is $140 million. Not $1, $140 million. That's 140 million times what they charged them. Besides that, if that ain't enough, they gave them a $99 million grant for free that they can use to remediate the property, to knock buildings down, for other construction costs. Then they added on top of that $20 million in free sales tax exemption for the construction. So when you add all this up, they got $140 million from the sale of the property that they should have paid that they didn't. They got a $99 million grant. That brings it up to $240 million. And then they got $20 million of free sales tax money. It's $260 million. And we didn't even get started into the tax breaks and everything else yet, and things that we don't know about yet. We're already at $250 million and counting of free taxpayer money to build something that this private entity should build out of their own pockets. There is no risk to these people. No risk. This is not what the city council bought into in 2008. This has shifted the cost of paying for this project from the developer to the taxpayers of the city. This has become another lie and a development of lies. They're giving away money like candy. In 2008, the city said the developers would pay for the remediation. Now in 2013, the cost has been shifted to the public. Developers not no longer paying anymore. The taxpayers are paying. Why do I say that? Because they were given a $99 million grant in which they can use that money to pay for the cost of remediation. In 2008, they said this place was contaminated like crazy. You had to wear spacesuits to get in here. There was an ash dump 100 years ago. It was called the Valley of the Ashes. Everything was contaminated around here. We disagree with that assumption then, and we disagree with it now. Still disagree with it. In 2008, the council was told that it was going to cost $570 million to remediate Willets Point. Now, we obtained Sterling's contract with the city. In it, it says they're going to remediate just 1/3 of the project, 22 acres, 23 acres, for $40 million. So now me doing my arithmetic, 40 times 3 is 120 million. That's a far cry from $570 million. Why was the council told $570 million? Why was that $570 million thrown out there? Was it to horrify the council? Was it to make them think that you have some kind of love canal over here that had to get remediated immediately and had to get done? Why would they be lied to on a scale of something that's 4 times less? I mean, how do you go from $570 million to $120 million? Now, as far as the contamination goes, we don't agree with it then, and we don't agree with it now. I'd like you to listen to a word from our lawyer, Mike Gerald, on this situation.
There's been a lot of discussion of contamination. There are processes for designating what are the most contaminated sites. There's a federal process called the National Priorities List. There's a state process, the State Superfund List. In both of those, there are systematic looks at what are the most contaminated sites. Willets Point is not on any of these lists. It has never been nominated for any of these lists. The official federal and state entities that are in the business of identifying the most contaminated sites have not looked at Willets Point. There are other Superfund sites in the city of New York, but this isn't one of them. The city is proposing to destroy the community in order to save it. The only places where this kind of thing has been done, where entire communities have been torn down, are areas that are highly contaminated, like Love Canal. There's been no suggestion that Willets Point is anywhere near that, and if it were, the city would not want to take title to it because of the liability risk that they would encounter if they were to acquire it. So the independent verification of contamination at this site is completely lacking.
We're not on a brownfield list or a Superfund list. I mean, this was blown way out of proportion. The remediation of this project was blown way out of proportion. I mean, all we hear is, this is the Valley of the Ashes. This place is so contaminated. If you have scientific proof in the numbers with the tests that you have done, prove it. I'd love to see it. They say that Willets Point's contaminated, that it was built on the Valley of the Ashes. Well, so is Citi Field. It's right across the street. And let me tell you, if anybody feels like they got sick or is not feeling good because of so-called contamination in here is like the Love Canal in Chernobyl, I mean, you got to wear a spacesuit according to these people. So if anybody's sick for any reason, I say you contact the Mets and look for some relief. Because why would they endanger the lives of their fans to tailgate right outside a contaminated Chernobyl place? Or why would they enable their fans to park down the block in Willets Point and walk to the game and walk through this zone where you got to wear a spacesuit? Contact the Mets and look for some relief. Now I'd like to touch on the sensitive topic of housing. In 2008, this was the linchpin of the whole project. It was proposed that there'd be 5,500 units with 35% affordable housing. Remember, this was a linchpin of the whole project. People were going crazy over having affordable housing, we needed more housing, people jumping up and down, we want housing. Now we're in 2013. Now it's proposed we only get 2,500 units of housing with 35% affordable. 35% of 2,500, that's not a crazy amount. When all these people were going crazy over, we need housing, we need housing, we need housing, we need housing. Now the housing itself has been delayed to the year 2025. Why? Why is it being delayed to the year 2025? Why can't they build it now? Why delay the linchpin of the whole project? You want to build a mall, you want to build a parking lot, you want to build a hotel, you want to build everything before you build housing. Why are the people waiting to 2025 to have anything built? Now, Sterling says they have to wait for the city to install access ramps off the Van Wyck Expressway in 2024. And unless we have the ramps, we cannot build the housing. Well, we have the contract between the city and Sterling. And in the contract, it says Sterling may build the ramps right now. As soon as they get the approvals that this project is ready to go by the end of this year, they can build those ramps right now. But they got to pay for them. Whoops, they don't want to pay for them. With all the free stuff that they've been given, land, grants, free sales tax, why wouldn't you take out the $75 million out of your own pocket and build these ramps now so these people could have affordable housing? There's another portion in this contract that upsets me. There's a $35 million penalty if they don't build no housing at all. So when the year 2025 comes and developer delays and delays and delays, like they do now, they're already delayed 5-6 years, and they say, well, we're not going to build any housing. We're in the year 2030, and we're not going to build any housing. $35 million in 2030 is like $5 million today. Why would anybody want to build housing and affordable housing when they could put a big box store there, retail store there, and get 5 times the rent? 5 times the rent, the money. Who's not going to pay that penalty to not have housing? With all the free money they got, they should be building housing now. Why would you even put a penalty in there so they have an out to get out of this clause? Mark my words, no housing is ever going to be built. If you're looking for housing and you're waiting for housing, give it up. You ain't never getting it. Now I'd like to talk about the RFP process and how we got to the point that Sterling actually won this bid. This project started out as a 62-acre project. It was to encompass the whole Willets Point area. Then they broke it down into phases. The bid was out there for phase 1. There were 4 bids submitted, 3 by other development companies and 1 by the Mets and Sterling Group and related. The 3 other development firms that submitted bids for this project actually built on the Willets Point phase 1 site. They planned out to build on that Willets Point site. They included housing, retail space, hotels, everything that basically was requested of them to submit. The 4th bid was some Sterling related group. They put a plan in to build on city parkland, which is part of the parking lot next to Citi Field. When this first came out, we're sitting here like, how did they get that from being requested to build on Willets Point property, phase 1? How do you go into the parking lot of Citi Field? There was never a request for anybody to build anything on city parkland in the parking lot of Citi Field. Why would you submit a bid like that when it wasn't asked of you? They proposed building a mall with a casino in it, no housing, and very little remediation. This is nothing what was asked of you. How do you even have the gall to submit something like this? And the funny thing is the city took it. In 2012, Mayor Bloomberg comes out and says that he has awarded the Sterling Group, which is the Mets, along with a related company, the bid. We're sitting here saying, how did they win the bid? How are the other developers not up in arms? They didn't have a chance to build something on Citi Field parking lot, which happens to be parkland, like I said before. They're going to build a 1,400,000 square foot mall on the parking lot next to Citi Field. So you know when you build a mall there in a parking lot, you have to replace those parking spaces. So they came up with an ingenious idea. Where else to replace the parking spaces? Put it in phase one, where we were supposed to build office buildings, hotels, and housing. So you're trying to tell me that people were forced to sell their property over a parking lot, tar with white stripes? Now, you know a parking lot, if somebody came and said, well, we're going to put a parking lot there, that wouldn't fly. So what did they say? They say, oh, well, we're going to build housing there in the year 2025. It's delayed, 10, 15 years. Why is it delayed? They might have fooled some people, but they haven't fooled us. The developer has said that the casino has been withdrawn from the plan, but yet in the contract that paints a different picture. It says in the contract that they're going to build an entertainment complex. What does entertainment mean? Is it a movie theater? Is it a go-kart track? Is it somebody shooting down balloons? Who knows? But isn't casino entertainment? Does that leave the door open for them to come back a couple of years from now and put a casino there and say, well, in our contract it said an entertainment complex? Who's fooling who? Now, I want to go back to the 1990s. This is something that aggravates me deeply. I never forgot about this. In about 1992, a former Met employee gave us a plan that was commissioned by the Mets to put an entertainment complex along with retail stores, hotels, right next to the stadium. The Mets were planning a new stadium. The stadium was positioned right on 126th Street. In fact, part of it lapped over onto people's property on Willets Point. My property now, according to that plan, would have been in the middle of an entertainment complex, probably with a hotel or something on it. This is back in 1992, 1993. They were thinking about it that far back, 20 years ago. What are the chances that somebody commissions a study on that, what they want to put there, and 20 years later they're involved in a bid process that they happen to win, that they put a bid in that nobody else could bid on that property because they're building it on their property. The other three people have no shot at getting it because they can't build what the Sterlings are going to build. They have no access to that property. What are the chances? Make no mistake about it. Their quest has been realized. They've waited 20 years and they've realized their dream. This whole developer selection process has been steered and constructed to make Sterling and the Mets fulfill their 20-year quest to obtain this property and to expand their empire. I asked Mayor Bloomberg, why must the taxpayers of New York City bail out billionaires? Or is that the way you roll, Mr. Mayor? Billionaires bailing out billionaires. So in conclusion, and to recap some points, the cost of the Willets Point development has shifted from the developers paying the bill to the taxpayers of New York City paying the bill to fund the quest of the Wilpons to finally, after 20 years, to take our land. The Mets and Sterling won a bid to build something that is suspiciously close to a report that was smuggled out of their office 20 years ago. The city lied about the cost of remediation to horrify the council. If they have proof, show it to us. The budget numbers don't lie. I mean, how do you go from $570 million to $120 million? The housing, the linchpin of development, is being delayed until 2025 for no good reason. And why is there a penalty clause? If the housing is not built, the developer pays $35 million penalty. You know when you put a penalty there, you can anticipate the housing is not going to get built. They're not going to build it. And you know what's even better? The city and the taxpayers are going to fund that penalty with all the good money that they gave them for free. The reality is, this is a legacy project of the outgoing Mayor Bloomberg. He's trying to ram it through before he leaves office. He's rushing and he's hoping to hide what's wrong with the project. Please join us, Willets Point United, in opposing this project and protect your quality of life. Check out our website at willetspoint.org. You know what? This soul smells like a rat. The stench you smell coming from the Flushing River is the stench of all the illegal things and the misdeeds that were done by the people pushing this plan for Willets Point through. Thank you for watching, and goodbye for now.